that you told yourself that you're going to take a break. Actually, 2 years is not even a break, it's a sabbatical. And you decided to reset your acting goals. Now, I was speaking to Anil Kapoor recently, and he told me that there was one point in his career when he wanted to take a break, or a sabbatical as it were, and your father, Amitabh Bachchan, is the person who he approached. I think they're working in a film together. And he immediately told him, never ever do that. Keep working. You had the same man in your house. Did he not give you the same advice?
Firstly, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and thank you. Oh. That feels good.
See, you shouldn't have taken that self-imposed hiatus.
You know, Mayank, when I decided that I needed to take this sabbatical, I was very convinced that this is what I needed to do for myself, for my career. And the decision had been made. I mean, obviously, normal table conversation, I did tell my family that this is what I was planning to do. And my father, he did respond with a similar, I mean, I don't think he was as emphatic as he would have been with Anil. But he said, look, you know, I did this and it's the biggest mistake I made in my career. Right. And are you sure you want to do this? And I mean, it's your call, but he gave me his opinion. I think times were different when he did it. In 1992, if I'm not mistaken, when my father finished shooting Khuda Gawah, he decided for various reasons that he wanted to...
Which was a great film, by the way.
It was, yes. Yeah. That he wanted to take a break. And after 5-6 years, he was kind of coerced into coming back. In those days, when he came back, he felt he had lost touch with what the audience wanted. Also, in that interim period, there was an entire new generation that had come into watching movies, but more importantly, there was an entire new generation that was making movies. The likes of Suraj Barjatia and Aditya Chopra had come in and left their stamp and changed Indian cinema and how the audiences wanted to view cinema, what kind of heroes they wanted. Suddenly from the angry young man, it became the romantic NRI hero. So when my dad came back, he felt that, oh my God, I'm still doing the kind of films that I was doing in the late 80s, early 90s, and that wasn't working. That was why he felt it was a mistake. He felt he lost touch. I was very aware of this, because obviously having, you know, lived through that phase with him. But when I decided, I think times have changed, there's a lot more information, you're a lot more accessible. And plus, I wasn't planning to, you know, go off into the mountains and just vegetate for like 2 years. I was very sure of how I wanted to execute this plan of mine. In fact, taking the break and stopping making films was actually the first step of the plan. It was the first step of the execution of the plan. This is something I've been thinking of for the last 4 or 5 years. All my friends are from the film industry. The people I socialize with on a normal basis are from, in some way, the film industry or the media. So I think, and today you have social media as well, and I think it's very easy to keep abreast of what's going on, what kind of films are being made. So I wasn't really removing myself from this world. So I was very sure of that I'm not going to lose touch. But more importantly, it was a very personal decision where I felt I just needed to recalibrate how I was working. It wasn't the kind of work I was doing, it's how I was doing the work. And I was very confident in the kind of actor I hoped to come back as. I had more confidence in that actor than I did in the doubt of, oh my God, am I going to lose touch? You know, out of sight, out of mind. You know, are you going to be left behind? All these kind of things. So I was more confident on the person that I aimed to become. And I think that's the difference between my dad's time and my time.
Right. I mean, one of the words to describe a summit, perhaps if you were to translate in Hindi, would be a manthan, right? Self-introspection. And that's precisely what you did. What was the conclusion from that self-introspection? Not that you went to the Himalayas, you were obviously working, you were doing various things at the same time. But what is it that you learned because you took a step back to be able to see a larger picture?
It kind of just emanated from a place where I just felt I'd become very complacent in my professional attitude. It's a bit of an irony, you know, we spend, I'm sure in most fields, but in cinema, you work hard to attain a certain level of material comfort as well. I mean, let's all be honest with ourselves. You know, that is a big part of our lives. And once you attain that comfort, then you just start coasting along with it. What happened with me professionally is I was in a phase where I was making some very successful films. I was getting paid some very good money. I had no pressure to deliver a hit because that was on a fellow actor of mine. I was in a very comfortable, happy space. I was working with some of my dearest friends, having a great time making
You mean
movies.
Happy New Year, Houseful 3?
Yeah, all
Right,
these
right,
kind of films,
right.
you know. And what happens is once it works, then you do another one because you know it works. Then you do the third one saying, this is really easy. Life isn't meant to be easy, especially films. Filmmaking is definitely not meant to be easy. As a creative person, as an actor, especially today, it's very important to be uncomfortable. It's very important to be challenged on a daily basis. When you know, can sleep peacefully and wake up and say, yeah, I can do this with my eyes shut and I can just coast along, it's a great space to be in.
Right.
I'm not going to, you know, lie to you. But what happens is I realize that if I carry on like this, what I'm bringing to the table in terms of a film or a project is going to keep depleting film by film. Because I'm not contributing anything. I'm just there, I'm having a blast.
Getting paid well.
I'm getting paid well, and the films are becoming, you know, 200, 300 crore
Right.
films. But if I'm going to stop contributing to my project, in 2-3 films times, my producers are going to say, hey, why do I need him? I'll take somebody else. So you become disposable. I wanted to stop before I reached that stage. I said, no, you need to stop. You need to take a step back and just recalibrate, like I say,
Sure.
re-energize, come back with a lot more focus, and come back with a plan. You know what had happened with me, Mayank, and I've known you for so many years, and I mean, I'm sure there are people here who have met, I mean, Jyoti's here. Jyoti's known me since I was a kid. You know, people don't believe it, but even though I'm born and brought up in this film industry, and this film industry is my life, it genuinely is. Making movies is something that I am most passionate about. I love the film industry. I love making films. I love watching films. It's my world. Now what happens is, when I got the opportunity to become an actor, and I say I got the opportunity because another thing people don't believe is...
Right, I was going to ask you that question at some point.
It wasn't easy comings for me in that sense. You know, everybody would have thought being Mr. Bachchan's son, there was a line of
No,
producers.
so did you make that shit up, that you actually went for 2 years from one producer director's office to the other? Because everyone in Bombay should have a struggle story. You are Amitabh Bachchan's son, and it takes you 2 years to make a debut. I refuse to believe it.
There's my life story for you. They refuse to believe my truth as well, yeah. No, the only difference is I did not entirely go to all the producers' office.
Okay.
Sometimes they came
They
to
came
my
to you as well.
father's. It was a bit of both. I was at that point working for my father's company as a production boy and as an assistant director. And that's when I was trying to get a job as an actor. And shockingly, which should have been a reality check for me, which I obviously didn't let it impact me as much as it should have, was most of them, and all the ones that said no to me, said it saying, no, we don't want the responsibility of
Right.
launching Amitabh Bachchan's son. Because they realized what that would take. And then suddenly, you know, one day, as a blessing, in walked Mr. J.P. Datta, and he had just made Border, and he offered me a film, and
Right.
and I jumped at the opportunity because obviously it's J.P. Datta. Why would you not want to work with him? But what happened after that is, it's just, you're like a kid in a candy store. I was just happy as an actor to have a job, to go out there and make movies. And guess what? I was enjoying it.
Right.
Maybe some of the results I wasn't enjoying, but by and large, the process was wonderful. So I never really laid down and say, hey, what do I want out of my career? What do I want to achieve? How do I want to go about achieving it? I was just happy being an actor, getting a job, and getting to make
getting
movies.
your next film and your next.
Absolutely.
Right.
So I needed to rethink that. So these are the kind of things
So
that I did.
you constantly say this, Abhishek, that this version of you that we see is version 2.0. Is it version 4.0? Is it a thing that you start thinking about, even from mortality point of view, legacy point of view, when you're like 40 plus, I'm like, boss, can't continue like this forever. Could age have a factor, be a factor in this?
I'm sure it could. It wasn't for me.
Okay.
Who's 40? Me?
No, you're 25.
No, I'm 42. But it's how old you feel, you know. No, age really wasn't a thing.
No?
But I think
Maybe having a
maybe
child.
time spent being a professional is.
Sure.
You know, after a point, you start evaluating your life and you say, hey, you know, what do I stand for? What am I going to be remembered as? And these are important questions. I think for me, it was more after the birth of my daughter that I started asking myself these questions.
That you want to leave behind a legacy.
Absolutely.
Enough of Houseful 3s and 4s and 5s.
No, I love that. I can't wait
I'm
to
sure.
do
But nobody's
Household
going to
5.
remember those films. I mean, I'm sure they will.
You just did.
Huh?
You just did.
Well, I didn't have a choice. I was just reading up on what's the last film that you did before Man Marziya, which I think people will remember.
Well, thank you. That's the intention.
Right.
Like I said, it's not, it wasn't the kind of films I was doing. If you ask me today, you might not agree with it because I know your personal choice, but I'd do another Houseful. I'd love to do another Happy New Year. I'd readily do a Bol Bachchan. I grew up watching Manmohan Desai and Prakash Mehra. They're my favorite filmmakers. I'd love to do the kind of stuff. And these are films that, you know, the audiences love. I agree, they're made for a specific kind of an audience. It's a genre of cinema which is leave your brains at home and just come entertain yourself. And there's a huge market for it, because if there wasn't, they wouldn't be doing the kind of business that they do. I mean, till date, I walk into places and people come up and say, you know, hey, Nandu Bide, or, you know, we loved you in Houseful. Or they'll come up to you and say, oh, we loved you in Dhoom and Jai Dikshit. So you can't discount that. So I love that kind of cinema. I can't wait to do it again. Coupled with other work that inspires me as well. But like I said, for me, it was more about how I was doing that kind of film. It wasn't like, okay, if you're going to stand there, then you need to make a difference. You need to be able to say something. You need to be able to do something. You need people to turn around and hopefully, you know, come back here and sit in front of you and get you to give as glowing a response to a Houseful that you have, say, for Man Marziya. Thank you, by the way. Yeah.
You're welcome.
So that's part of the goal. You can't just write off stuff and say, oh, Mayank didn't like it, so that's fine.
No, of course
No,
not.
I want you to like it, so I'm going to work hard enough so that...
Did it happen in the early part of your career, especially, Abhishek, when you did certain films and you thought you'd done a great job in those films, and perhaps people hadn't watched it and you felt even worse about it? I'll give an example, okay? And of course, you'll come up with far more examples. Like one of my favorite performances of yours is a film called Run, right? And there's this scene where you're in a subway. And so just to let the audience know, there are a bunch of goons and the hero is right there facing the bunch of goons, and he turns around and he starts running. So you think, Ari, ek to naya type ka hero hai, he's running. But he's actually running to catch the shutter, to pull it down so no one else runs away, and then he whacks the shit out of everyone. I don't know how many people saw that, but that was a fantastic performance.
That was the reason I did the film.
Right. Oh, was that the scene?
Yeah. So, Run was a Tamil film which Maddie had acted in. And Maddie, Madhavan is a dear friend of mine. And I had agreed to do it because, it's a very cool story. Mr. Boni Kapoor wanted to produce the film. And he said, look, come watch this film. I said, okay. So I went to see it in a trial room that we have called Ketnav, which is in Bandra. And I went and sat there. I remember Sridevi ji, the late Sridevi ji, was sitting next to me. I'm a huge fan of hers, okay? I used to go hang out on the sets of Khudagawa just to watch her. And she was sitting next to me, and she's always been so lovely to me, and she had always encouraged me, and she had loved this film I'd done called Tera Jadoo Chal Gaya. I think she was the only person who
No, that's not true. That's not true.
But yeah,
There
thank you.
Yeah.
Were you born? Yeah. So, so I was sitting next to her, and I was just, I'm sitting next to Sridevi. I was like, wow. And suddenly, I wasn't even paying attention to the film. But suddenly, when that scene came, for me, that was my ode to my father, actually. Because that scene reminded me of a scene in Diwar.
Right.
And I said, I'm doing this film. And then when I reached the set, I remember that, oh God, I've only remember one scene. I don't even remember what the film was about. But that was the reason I did that film. And that film actually got a great response. That's still one of the films that, you know, on Twitter till date, people still say that they liked it. So a few people saw it. But, you know, every film has its own destiny, I believe. So, yeah.
Are there any others you can remember which, I mean the early part of your career where you felt like you'd given your best, but I don't think the audience came and they should have?
No.
None?
The one truth which us actors very seldom own up to is when you see your film, which you do before the audience does, you know whether it's going to work or not.
Really?
Yeah. you know whether you've given your best, because you know the amount of effort you've put in whilst filming it. So you realize that. It's after that, it's, you know, hope is a very dangerous thing. You just hope it clicks. But you know the truth. I've, very honestly, I've done some 60 odd films now.
Right.
I've been wrong just about one of them. I could sit in the trial and be like, oh, another one bites the dust.
Really?
Yeah. Because of the way I worked in it. Not as an entire,
Sure.
I can't comment on other people's work. But I knew, and I'm one of those people who believes that if your work is that good, the film will work. So I knew each and every
So which was this one that you were wrong about?
Jhoom Barabar Jhoom.
Are.
Yeah, I loved doing Jhoom Barabar Jhoom. I had such a blast. It was great music. Shahad and I were collaborating after Bunty Aur Bubbly. We had a blast making the film.
That movie you need drugs for.
It was, yeah, no, say no to drugs, man. Yeah. So it was just wonderful. And when I saw the screening of it, all of us were watching it together, and we had a blast watching it. But then when the film didn't end up doing the kind of business I thought it did, it kind of threw me off.
Did
But
you
then I
actually go-
realized why it didn't. And
Did you actually go with coins to the screening?
Yes.
You actually throwing them?
When my dad comes on, yeah. Because I'd done that in Bunty Aur Bubbly as well.
Okay.
Shahad and I are big Amitabh Bachchan fans. So in Bunty Aur Bubbly, when his introduction happens, we actually went to Gaiety Galaxy and threw money.
Like, you won't get recognized in Gaiety Galaxy?
Or if you run down the aisle really fast and throw money and run out again,
Really?
you're fine. And then you meet the ticket collector who says, "Mera screen mat phado tum." It's okay, sorry. And then yeah. So we did that in Jhoom Barabar Jhoom. He did a song in that. And so we did that, yeah. But that was the one film which didn't do what I expected it to do. It didn't do badly, actually, but not what I expected it to do. That was the only one.
The others you've seen and you know.
Yeah. I think what went wrong with Jhoom Barabar Jhoom is there was a problem in relatability. You said it. You said you wanted to take drugs and watch it. It's because I think the characters were a bit too eccentric and flamboyant. Secondly, also what happens if you compare it to his last film, which was Bunty Aur Bubbly, the best part about Bunty Aur Bubbly. Have you all seen this movie called Bunty Aur Bubbly? Okay.
Hey, stop being
So
modest. Have you guys seen the movie called
It's important
Bunty
to
Aur
ask.
Bubbly? It's one of the biggest hits of that year.
Yeah, but they all
Just
look,
in case you're
yeah,
sitting
just
in
case,
some
yeah.
other country.
So the relatability of Rakesh and Vimmi is that these small town kids who have stars in their eyes and want to make it big, that's, it was aspirational. It was every small town kid's dream to grow up and go to Bombay. That was the big thing. So there's that aspiration, there's that relatability. Now in India, हमारे रिश्तेदार फॉरेन में रहते हैं. It's a big deal. Hounslow में 10 जन एक कमरे में दिन रात, they're stuck somewhere. वो problem नहीं है. How they live? वो तो foreign में है.
Right.
विलायत में रहते हैं. It's a very big thing. So now, when you've already showing a film about people who are living abroad, they're already aspirational. So we want to see the Raichans
Right.
of K3G. You don't want to know what their normal problems are. एक तो तुम लोग विलायत में रह रहे हो. I don't want to know what your problem is, and I don't care about your problems unless you're showing me an aspirational life. So I think they just disconnected from it. To add to it, the characters were very zany, very out there. So they've just switched off from it. And they're like, this is a trip we don't want to be on.
But I said the drugs part because there's that song where the strobe lights are on.
Yeah.
And in the theater is really, really trippy.
Yeah. Kiss of Love, I think that's called.
Right.
That was Bobby and
Because
Preeti's.
it's like a dark hall. And
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen that in
Yeah.
any film in a theater.
But that's Shahad, Shahad
Right.
has a very visual sense of cinema, and he can be very eccentric if he wants to. But yeah, that was the only film that I went wrong
so
on.
did Jhoom Barabar Jhoom in that sense start out actually being an India story and then became this? That
Yeah.
the two people actually meet
So
in
when we were doing Bunty Aur Bubbly is when Shahad narrated a film called Sangam Mel, which is what Jhoom Barabar Jhoom became.
Right.
It was the story of two kids who had run away and meet in Nizamuddin station.
Right.
And then make up these stories because they're actually scared and just to make a companion and find out that they're falling in love. So it started as that. But then Adi felt that it was becoming a bit too similar to Bunty Aur Bubbly. And then he recast the film and then he said, and then instead of Rani and me, then became Preeti and myself. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, Rani is the one who suggested to Adi that, why don't you base this in London? Because Shahad had never traveled outside India. So Adi felt that with Shahad's visual sense, he'd shoot that in a very trippy way. But I think that's where we went wrong. We kind of lost the roots of the film.
I think one of the things that people may not know about you, and I only recently learned, is that you have a notebook and you actually watch every film of yours and you review your performance almost like a reviewer would. Is that true?
Yes.
I wish I could just asked you to carry your notebook. It would have been fantastic.
No. Terrible handwriting.
Are you terribly self-critical?
Yes.
Yeah,
As you should be.
as you should
Like
be.
I said, every actor knows, you know, at the end of the day, they know whether they've done a good job, whether they can do better. Yes, when you do go back and review, like last night I saw Ashu's film, Khele Hum Ji Jaan Se, you start growing as an actor. So I think part of the exercise of when you can look back at your work and find faults, in a sense is reassuring because that means you're already evolved a bit more than when you were doing the film. And I like to review my films regularly because I make notes as to how I could have improved that performance or what I need to be careful of.
So are you only looking at yourself or are you looking at the film in totality?
In the past couple of years, in totality.
Okay.
Before that, it was just myself.
Right.
I was still, I mean, at the start of my career, when I was still checking off some very basic things, which is why I've always said, whenever I've been asked that, I don't think I was prepared when I started becoming an actor. I mean, I see some of my colleagues that, but they were fully prepared. I was just, oh, I got a job, yay, let's go. I mean, at the start of my career, I was still, is my hairstyle correct? Is my left profile good? Is my right profile good? Very basics of film acting. I was still figuring that stuff out. Now I managed to see it as an entire.
And you also look at every review that's, that's been written around. I don't know, now of course it will be impossible for you to, because there are millions of them, and if you include social media too. And that you actually read what people have said about your performance. Is that true?
Yes.
Each one.
As many as I can.
As many as you can.
Yeah. When I started my career, I used to actually put up, I had a few of yours up there as well, on my bathroom mirror, and I used to highlight the portions that, the critiques had not liked about me personally.
Right.
And it was a kind of visual representation for me that from the first film to the latest film, the highlighted section should reduce. So that was kind of like a thing of self-improvement. So, okay, they didn't like this. Next film, try and implement that to improve upon that. So I used to do that.
Has there ever been a point where a reviewer is sitting right next to you and read a review to your face?
Not that I can remember.
Okay, we're going to do that right now.
Okay. Is it your review?
Yeah.
One of yours, right?
Yes.
This should be fun.
So background, okay, it's obviously a very, very short excerpt, but the one that relates to you. Background score is an indoor concert. Artwork aims at advertising photography alone. Farhan Akhtar's written the full dialogue. His companies produced the picture. Their recent credits include Lag By Chance, Honeymoon Travels Private Limited, Rock On, Karthik Calling Karthik. Which is sad, given no actor in Bollywood believes in the auteur theory more than Abhishek Bachchan does. If you've noticed, practically all his colossal creative failures, let alone their box office response, seem to have been directed by filmmakers most would otherwise trust. Shad Ali's Jhoom Barabar Jhoom, after Bunty or Bubbly, that we just discussed. Ashutosh Gowarikar's Khele Hum Ji Jaan Se, after Jodha Akbar,